there's so many bad sequels because I feel like the essence of what made the original so interesting is the thing that's not really focused on. Usually what's focused on in a sequel is more, and it's more spectacle, not the thing that made it compelling to begin with.
So, when is a hit movie sequel one too many that even the moviegoer doesn't want? But before we start, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, share this video. Be sure to hit that little notification bell, switch it to on, and you'll get all our notifications here on Cuticast TV and Man with the Show and other programming on our social media platforms. Well, this past week, we saw the trailer to Matrix 4 come out, Matrix Resurrections, and to be honest, I didn't like it. As much as what people say, oh, it looks great, it's fantastic, they're bringing this back. The first thing when I heard that this sequel was in the works, I said, they've dipped into the well one sequel too much. And here is the reason. And when you look at the first three on there, Matrix 1 was ahead of its time. It's still one of the greatest movies ever made. It is fantastic. It's well made. It's a good story arc and stuff like that. When we got the sequel, it was like, okay, it's a sequel to it, on that. When it got to the third story, it was really, I'm here again for this on there. And you may criticize me on this, but hear me out to the situation. And this goes not only for the Matrix, this goes for Hollywood as a whole. They dip into the well too many times, and it's been a major problem in history itself. You've seen this many times. I mean, we could go on lists and lists of movies that have had, horrible sequels. You could talk back to Jaws. You could talk back to The Last Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the new one will probably be another train wreck to the situation. The Riddick movies. I love the concept of the Riddick movies. I didn't like the last one. It was going too far with it. The concept was just getting, why? We could go through a ton of movies that have been made and their sequels, and out there. Let's take, for example, the Star Trek movies. The Star Trek movies, number one was good. Some people tout that it's not good, but if you look at it from the perspective of a Star Trek movie, it's like taking an episode and expanding it out, an original Star Trek, and that's why I consider that one, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, a really good movie. Star Trek: Wrath of Khan, still my top best. It's like my Empire Strikes Back. It is one of the best. Search for Spock was okay to the situation. The Voyage Home was getting back to that Star Trek TV series, original series look to it. It was a good concept, but it had some failures in it on there. Then you had how can I put this? The Search for God. I call it The Search for God. That whole horrible movie that they did with Spock's brother. I was just like really total failure. But then we jump back to the Undiscovered Country, which I found that very good. It had all the concepts of being close to the Wrath of Khan, really well done, a good adventure, and it had the elements of Star Trek itself, the original series. Then we started going into the Next Generation stuff. And this is where it started to fall off a bit. You had Generations, which you had William Shatner showed on there. Good in a premise, but execution was done horribly. First Contact, was a good premise also. Had some crazy issues into there. Some parts of it were thrown as an element to the Enterprise TV series, but still, I wouldn't call it in my top movies on there. Insurrection, total garbage. Nemesis, total garbage. And then we get into the J.J. Abrams universe, all garbage, all pure garbage. I mean, like I said, you're dipping into too much into the well for the series. One, when you get to a certain point, you got to ask yourself, should I move on? Should I just do something else? See, the perfect example for a good Star Trek movie, and I keep bringing this up, or TV series, is to go back to Axanar, or to go back to Star Trek Continues, or any other fan movie or series that was on YouTube. Look at what they've done. Look at the stories that they carry on there. These are more interesting stories than what CBS and Paramount has been able to produce. If you caught my CBS Hates Fan Films video, that goes into a little bit of detail. Just to sum it up, CBS, and I wholeheartedly believe this, they were getting embarrassed by the fan films on YouTube. And, they could have just sued Axanar itself. But no, they had to just completely wipe the table clean of all fan films and says, oh, well, if we give them these limitations, they won't make a good fan film. But yet, nevertheless, they're still making good Star Trek fan films out there, even with the limitations. So it shows you the skill that some people are out there. Why aren't they working in Hollywood? I'll tell you why. Because of the politics and the activism in the industry. Tarantino said it best. They've lost the artistic expression that Hollywood is and became more ideology. And that is a bad thing. I mean, Star Trek is one of a couple of movie franchises that we can go through. I mean, Indiana Jones is another one, stuff like that. But, you look to the perspective that you have something like The Matrix that's coming out. And I'm not going to go through the rumor, but I would go to Bounding Into Comics. They have a article out by someone supposedly got a hold that was a YouTuber, World of Geekum. In fact, I heard that the video has been flagged by Warner, that he explains some of the details of the movie itself, the plot lines of the movie. Now, you can take it as a grain of salt or take it reality. Remember, we got the Powerpuff Girls script and several other scripts from people online showing that basically Hollywood is still making crap. But to the perspective that Resurrection is a sequel to the other three films, that they're just going to the base, that this takes place just to give you one emphasis of it, that supposedly it takes place many years, and we're talking many years after the incidents from 3. And we're still continuing to the same thing with Neo and all this. Why? There was a great DVD that came out, and I highly recommend it. And it's part of the Matrix series, and it's the Animatrix. Now, what makes the Animatrix very good was that, not that because of the animators, not because it was a Matrix, it was that the stories themselves were individually different. Yes, there was one story with one of the characters, one or two of the characters on there. But the rest of the stories were pretty much stuff from the Matrix itself, from different time periods of the Matrix, different stories, different people of things that were going on. Like there was one where they had the 3-part, I think it was 3 parts, that talked about the beginning of the Matrix, the history behind why this happened, that was very good. Should that be made into a live action? No, hell no. And then you had other stories. You had that, which I think one of the best stories is the guy who was trying to, that he is an Olympic runner, and he's trying to speed up as fast as he can, and it's getting to the point where, you know, you're in the Matrix on there, and he's beginning to realize that he can move faster and faster, and he's beginning to see the Matrix. And of course, the Matrix is trying to stop him from becoming that. And that's a great story in itself. And then many other great stories in that DVD. I highly recommend getting it, or if you see it online, watch it. It is really good. This is what should have been done. The Wachowskis should have gone in this direction. Don't go to a sequel of The Matrix. Give us another story. Maybe you might be able to get the fans back really excited and back into it, that we give a new story to it. I mean, if you want to throw Neo in the background or one of the other characters in the background, that's fine. Easter eggs. You know, we love the Easter eggs in the movies, and that is okay. But, you know, if you're just going back and just continuing to give us the same and the same and the same, people are going to stop going to the movies. You know, people are tired of all these things, and you could see it in the box office on there. You're seeing what's going on. You see what's going on with Marvel, you know, and they say, well, Shang-Chi is such a great movie and stuff like that. Yes, it's not a sequel, but it's part of a base sequels to storylines from each individual movie linked together. You know, I have to say, Iron Man's a great movie. Cap is a great movie. As the movies went on, they started to slide downward. You know, Guardians was a good movie. Was a really good movie. The sequel itself, okay. Loved the soundtrack, loved some of the elements, but it kind of faltered. The ego character was, you know, faltered. These are the problems with it. They keep faltering a lot of these characters. These, you know, especially the villain. You know, Shang-Chi. You know, you threw in the character from Iron Man 3. And you put it in there, you know, into this one, and it's just like, oh, why did you do this? You know, you had the chance to give us the real version of the Mandarin, but you didn't. Look what you did to MODOK. You threw MODOK into an animated series, comedy series. MODOK was a big villain back in the day. You know. It amazes me how they just treat it. But here, let me put to this perspective, and let's take it from a Hollywood point of view of the problems of sequels itself on there. And this is from 2016. Hollywood Reporter reported this in 2016. So we're not talking pandemic era. We're not talking about the situations and stuff like that. We're talking prior to this. And the reason, the problems Hollywood has, that sequels, that, you know, they can make the money, but moviegoers don't want these. And we'll read a little bit into this. 2016 has proven to be a very tough battleground, and the landscape has been littered with a series of sequels that have come up short and thus called into question the entire notion of the inherent appeal of non-original franchise-based content, says one analyst. After last summer's Pitch Perfect 2, proven a breakout hit, not to my eyes, I did not like the movie at all, grossing $287 million worldwide and doubling the $115 worldwide gross of the original 2012 original, the third installment suddenly was a red-hot franchise and became inevitable. Oh, Jesus, I'm going to be doing the thing like freaking in that Team America movie.
You see, the new world is inevitable.
It's what?
Inevitable.
One more time?
Inevitable! Things are inevitably going to change. God damn it, open your fucking ears.
Let me read on. But on May 31st, University abruptly pushed back the release of Pitch Perfect 3 by 5 months from July 2017 to December of the same year. And just later, it dropped another bombshell. Elizabeth Banks will not be returning as a director, which I don't like her as a director. You know, you've seen some of her movies and how they bombed as well. Charlie's Angels to be perfect example. The reason, Banks revealed over the weekend, that the development process was taking longer than expected. You see that. And part of the delay was due to the nervousness which studios are now viewing sequels. The delay pushed the shooting schedule into fall when it would interfere with her kids' schedule, she explained. We feel obligated to put out the best movie, and anyone who has done sequels, this third one will be hard to figure out what the story is. Banks, who remains on the project as producer, said Saturday at the PGA's produced by conference. You throw excuses. Now, yeah, I can understand, Elizabeth has her kids, and the kids, that's very important. Yeah, it is very important. But, when you're writing sequels and stuff like this, if you don't have a story, don't go with it. If you're not going to have anything on there, don't go with it. If you've exhausted all your resources, don't do it. Universal, home of the female-centric franchise, I can't believe they wrote this, have a good reason to slow down sequels after the sequel had disappointed at the box office this year. The weekend's underpowering opening of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, I did not like that, is just another example, and it is a perplexing and alarming Hollywood studios, which are addicted to turning films of all sizes and genres into ongoing franchises, from comedies to the smallest horror films to tentpoles. Private studio executives concede that they are equal opportunity offenders when it comes to making sequels. Consumers aren't necessarily clamoring for it, such as The Huntsman. Yeah, another bomb there. The Universal follow-up earned only 59% less than its predecessor. Others know poor reviews have become a large factor, even with the sequel is part of the popular property. And that is true too, but they also don't add in the YouTubers there, because the YouTubers were talking about these back then. Sequels of late have fallen to rough times. The tried and true formulas and familiar characters and themes are the cornerstone of the modern sequel, have acted in de facto life insurance policy against box office failure. However, 2016 has proven a very tough battleground, and the landscape has been littered with a series of sequels that have come up short and thus called into question the entire notion of the inherent appeal of non-original fan-based concept. Now we're going to jump down a little bit, and this is where it becomes to the important part of this article. Certainly the bar has been raised, says Paramount Vice Chairman Rob Moore at the time. Franchises give you a leg up, but I think audiences are definitely challenging us to make sure the story will be unique and different this time. They're not listening to the audiences. They're not. This was 2016. They're not listening to the audience in 2021. Many new Disney Summer's tentpole Alice Through the Looking Glass was in trouble before it launched to a paltry $26.9 million over the 3-day Memorial Day weekend. 77% behind Alice in Wonderland, but no one anticipated Universe's Neighbors 2 Sorority Rising will come in 56% below the original Neighbors in its debut. And the decision to push back Pitch Perfect 3, coming in less than a month after the studio had actually moved up the release to July 2017 from August, was announced the days after Neighbors 2 opened over the May 20 to 22 timeframe. Last month's Fox Summers offering X-Men Apocalypse opened well behind 2014's Days of Future Past, which technically I didn't really like either one of those. The former got a 48% Rotten Tomatoes, down significantly from 91% earned by its predecessor. Both films are from Bryan Singer, which we know that situation on there. And I'm going to jump down to this also section 2. Certainly sequels haven't affected every film. Disney's and Marvel's Captain America Civil War, the first tentpole of the summer, has amassed $1.132 billion, which Captain Civil War, I think, is one of the better ones of the lineup. It's an uptick since Winter Soldier, which is another one that was okay, which I did not like, Avengers Age of Ultron. And Batman Superman v Dawn Justice, which I consider one of the worst films ever, released in late March, took in $871 worldwide compared to $668 million for 2013's Man of Steel, even if the many analysts thought it would get to $1 billion, which probably by now I think it is at $1 billion. If anyone thought sequels' success to be a sure thing, a glance at the 2016 world box office charts proves the power of the originals over sequels, as Captain America is the only sequel that has been able to outgross the pair of original tentpoles, Disney Animation Studios' Zootopia, which just crossed the 1 billion mark, and Disney's Jungle Book, 800.95. I'm going to read that section again. If anyone thought the sequel success to be a sure thing, a glance at 2016's worldwide box office chart proves the power of originals over sequels, as Captain America Civil War is the only sequel that has been able to outgross a pair of the original tentpoles. Perfect slam right there. They still do not look at these. We've had an Independence Day sequel. We had a Ghostbusters reboot. Here's one thing. If a movie sequel is being announced and they say it is a radical reboot made for the modern era, run the hell away. Because one thing is, when you hear those terminology, and there's a whole list of others, means the whole movie is going to be changed. There's going to be ideology put into it, and not to the artwork or what the originals brought favor to the fans. And people says, well, we're making it in Hollywood for the general audience. Yes, but remember, as a customer, you, my viewers, are customers. I am a customer to this industry. If you have a sale on an item, you want to get me in, make sure the item is a good item, that it's well worth the price. If the item is faltered, defects, and you say, well, we're not making it for you, that is totally incorrect. You don't, piss off the fan. You don't piss off your customers. You have to respect your customers. Who are you making this for? These people are making it for themselves. And that's how it's looked. All you have to do is look at that female-centric Ghostbusters. Look how crappy it was. Afterlife may be good or may be awful. I don't know. I looked at one thing about me now lately, I've been taking everything with a real fine grain of salt. I'm not trusting sequels. I'm not trusting any reboots or anything coming out. Perfect example, and we have a video coming out on there. The new Dune movie that's coming out. There are some reviews coming up the chain. Some of them are saying, oh, it's fantastic. It's such a great film. Oh, it's so fantastic. But I've seen some stuff out like IndieWire and some others that says it is a massive disappointment. And I'll tell you why. Before you even get to the point of making the film, you have to ask for yourself, have I read the material? Have I understood the material? Have I spoken to people around that material that has put to the premise that they knew better than me what the story is? When you start to change characters, race swap, or add or subtract characters, you've changed already what the original author wanted. Now, yes, adaptation to movies. You have to try to adapt it to the screen. The Dune novels are the most difficult novels to adapt to a screen. I'll repeat myself. The Dune novels are the most difficult books to adapt to a screen. Why? Because of the way they're written. Not saying they're badly written. It's not poorly written. It's very well written. If anything, it's a masterpiece. But the thing about it is, you have a director, and I always say the director is the boss. It's his vision and all that. Denis Villeneuve, did he have full control over this Dune? I don't think so. Two, no offense to Denis, and he's done some good stuff, but he's done a lot of bad movies. Let's go to the Blade Runner sequel. He made a Blade Runner sequel that was just horrible. He was missing the noir of the whole situation. Blade Runner is a science fiction noir. He didn't get that. He didn't understand that that's what Blade Runner was. Go back to what, if you go back to the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, to all those noirs, and some of the 80s noirs. We have a pre-flight coming, talking about a great 80s noir that basically is still underrated to this day. It is a fantastic movie done by one of the best directors in the industry, William Friedkin. That's To Live and Die in L.A., the guy who did The French Connection. And that is a great movie. Taking to the Dune part, if you remove, like, for example, there is one character missing. Is he coming in the sequel? I don't know, probably. But that character has been removed from the first part of the movie, which is an important part. It is a premise. You've taken away, when you take away and you change something in there because you said, well, I'm making it for modern audiences. But that's not what you want to get. That's not what you're getting to the story. You're taking away from the story. People who have read these books, they want to come to see the movie and spend the money to see them. Some of them will walk out and says, this is not the Dune that I expected. David Lynch failed. Sci-Fi Channel failed. Is this one going to make money? Yes, it will make money. Will it be a blockbuster hit? Hard to say, but possibly. Is it a true tradition story to Dune, an actual Dune story? No, it is not. And this is the problem with these things. And this is the same thing with the sequels. Sequels of movies, if you're going to make a sequel to a movie, you must maintain the story itself properly. You must not minus anything out. You must look at the previous story, all the elements, and make sure that you're bringing those elements that you took from the original and bring it into the sequel, that makes sure, certain storylines and stuff like that basically was going on in the first one. And you have to bring it in a little bit into the sequel. You jumpstart into another story, but, that's okay, depending on the story. For example, if it's a detective story, like the old detective stories, the Philip Marlowe's and stuff like that, you think of it like a TV series it's one episode to one episode to one episode. It can work or it can fail in some cases. But when you're doing something like a Marvel film, you're doing a Captain America, you better make sure that you have the elements from the previous movie influxed into here. And if you're doing a certain villain, if you're doing a certain villainess, if you're doing a certain storyline, you make sure you get it right. You make sure you get it right. And for the reason is, people will come back to you. This is why the Fantastic Four movies have not worked, and their sequels. You have that one where you have Galactus. And Galactus was like a little cloud. It's just a cloud in the sky, a little sandstorm. That's not Galactus. If you're using Galactus, you better have Galactus there. You better have things coming out of the side starting to suck the planet. You better have Galactus hovering overhead, standing up or sitting down in a chair. You make sure that you put these elements in there. See, here's one of the failures for the Avengers, the Endgame and the Infinity movies. Thanos did not have death next to him. If you know the stories, death was part of the whole premise with Thanos, that he wanted to praise of death. He was in love with death. Wasn't used. Not one iota. The movie did well. Yeah, movie bankrolled. It bankrolled okay because basically this is what they were expecting. And yeah, there was good action. It was good. But still, the story faltered in certain categories into there. And, oh man, here's the big thing. If you have certain characters in movies and they're not available for the actor's not available for the next movie, don't replace him and don't kill him off screen. A la Independence Day. If you remember Independence Day, they killed Will Smith's character off screen. You know, Resurgence was a horrible movie, terrible. But this is what they put out. This is what Hollywood puts out. They think that, oh yeah, we're guaranteed the money. We're guaranteed the money. We're guaranteed we're going to get this amount of money. This is why Shang-Chi, they're trying to push this narrative with Shang-Chi. We're going to get this money. We're going to get this money and stuff like that. You're going to get to a point where that money is not going to be coming in anymore. You know, you keep doing this, you're going to kill your business this way. It has happened before. Gone are the days of the 60s to 90s where basically chances were really, really taken in the industry. Even though back before the 60s, during the Hays Code era, there were some filmmakers taking chances even then. And they made good movies. Some of them won Oscars. Some of them were very well made. Some are still classics today. Some of them faltered, even though they were very well made. I always hit back to the Big Sleep, the Humphrey Bogart movie that basically, because of censorship, certain elements of the movie were removed and were very confusing. Even though it was a good film, but it was still very confusing. You know, basically, who murdered this person? Why was the reason why there was a camera in this device in a bust? What were the pictures they were taking? Not knowing that it was a prostitution ring, blackmail ring, and they couldn't say that. They couldn't say that at all. Some of the newer versions, you'll see, you're able to get a little bit more close, but there are still elements that are missing that were never shot because of the Hays Code. But you look throughout the after the 60s, when the Hays Code started to go away and became the MPAA, you saw many movies, and some of them had sequels. I mean, you go back to Trancers, unusual low-budget film that had a couple sequels, but also they faltered to a point where they went one sequel too many. And there's a couple of others, you know, you got the Full Moon Company and a couple others that have made sequels to horror films that basically, you know, they were okay, some of the sequels, and then they faltered too and went one too many as well, but they weren't afraid to do them. See, with Hollywood, they're afraid, they don't want to touch anything new. They don't want to touch anything really new. But there are some small independent movies out there that have done very well for itself and has banked money. You know, I go back to The Wretch. Not the greatest film in the world, but it had one of the lowest budgets, $66,000 budget, and it grossed $4 million. That's money in the bank. That's money in the bank. You made a movie for $66,000. You know, they're making all these movies for $200 million, $300 million. You know, and they want to bank on, you know, because they have to pay high-end actors. And look what's happening now. Black Widow has a lawsuit. Has a total lawsuit going on because she didn't get paid what she was supposed to get paid. To finalize this video, should Matrix have gotten a number 4? No, it shouldn't have. It shouldn't have gotten a sequel. It should have gotten a new story, not a reboot, not a radical incline, not made for the modern era, but another story. It's like going back to The Big Sleep. Raymond Chandler has had many novels, and same thing. Ian Fleming has had many novels. You know, you're gonna get to the point where you're gonna get the last novel, and that's it. That's done. Then you don't touch it anymore, unless you can find someone that can write like Ian Fleming, or Chandler, or many other well-known writers on there. So, sequels are okay up to a certain point, and then you have to stop, whether it's one sequel or two. You can't have a Fast and the Furious, which you're already on your way to your 10th film, even though you've banked some money on there. It's the same repetitive constantly. So you've reached this part of the video. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, share this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, season premiere of Saturday Pre-Flight, which we were discussing Norwaz here. In fact, the premiere episode will be dealing with Norwaz, with one of the greatest Norwaz, I would have to say, in history. So tune in, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye now.